So let's get started then, shall we? Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, folks. Thank you for joining me for the LED webinar series. So we're going to learn how to think like a magician. Now, a lot of people that I know in business and in corporate world, when you've been telling management about a problem for weeks and you're just like, fine, just let the world burn. I have also a full-time job and I work at a major manufacturing company. And it is amazing how much of this kind of thing goes on, where people who are in teams or separate teams, they request for information or for something else to get done, or there's a problem and it never gets solved. And this becomes an attitude. And this is something that really can be easily solved if we just really lean into continuous improvement thinking and mindset. Because if you do even the most basic parts of lean and continuous improvement, outstanding results can happen. And here's what I mean. So back in 2014, by the way, this is my story, and it's going to be very interesting. I wanted to get out of the job that I was currently in. I was working at a local TV station and I was selling airtime. And let me tell you, it was the worst job I had ever had. I was working in Flint, Michigan. And back when I was in my teenage years, I really enjoyed competitive magic. And there is the top level of competition, and that is called FISM. It's a Federation of International Societies of Magicians. And it's the Olympics of Magic, and it's held every 3 years in a different country. And it's gigantic. And it's probably the hardest juried arts competition in the world, but hardly anybody knows about it. And so I wanted to compete, but I only had 6 months to prepare for the qualifiers. They have qualifiers in different regions of the world. And the one that was going to be in America was going to be in St. Louis. And so I got myself prepared. I dusted off my old competition act from the 80s. And I'm like, yeah, this is going to be great. And I get to the competition and this guy appears, Hun Lee. Now, Hun Lee was part of this group of 17 young, very talented Korean magicians. And they called it the Korean Tsunami. These guys came in with a team and they destroyed the competition in ways that nobody could even anticipate. It was almost as if what they were doing on stage was real magic. Now, this guy, he was in the stage competition with me, and he goes out on stage and he starts doing his act, and his cards are falling on the floor. He tips his table over, and everybody's like, this is okay. It's an okay act. And then the button appears on his table, and it is a rewind button. And he does his entire act in fast reverse. And he did it so well that people at the end were screaming, no way, there's just no way what I'm seeing is real. The guy gets a 3-minute standing ovation. And then I go on. The curtain hits my table. I have a string for a cane trick that I'm doing, and it gets all tangled up. 2 minutes of my act is busted. And I basically face plant in front of 2,000 magicians and producers and judges from all over the world. Now, I want to give you a minute and a half of Hun Lee's performance so you can understand just how incredibly hard it is to qualify for FISM. Now, what you're seeing is real. So that guy absolutely destroys me. Now, here's a minute and a half of what my act was. All right, so that act was basically this. If you remember the breakdancer from the Olympics, that was me. For every person in the world of magic, that's how I was viewed. I couldn't even get my friends to talk to me. And it wasn't until I had a conversation with an old magician who used to work as a science researcher for Dow Chemical. He's one of the greatest minds in magic. His name is Gene Anderson. And he said, Stuart, don't let this bother you. You've got something with that mirror. You just got to keep working on it. He said, I want a story. And so I got to thinking about it. I ended up quitting my job, and I ended up at a manufacturing company, and they started this lean stuff. And I took right to it because lean is very much like theater. So I needed to shift my brain into creating my own lean culture. And by the way, at the FISM qualifier, who was there? It was Shin Lim. That was when he broke out. And a few years later, he won America's Got Talent twice. So that's how tough that competition was. So I had this goal. I needed to work through my act. I did an after action review, and I had 3 more years to get my act together and to really dig deep and find out what was within me to qualify and rebuild all of the errors that I had made with all of my friends in magic and the shame of failing so miserably in front of everybody. So I had 3 years. So I just wasn't clever enough. But what I found when I started using lean is that I really was clever, but cleverness is buried inside of ideas and through problem solving. And that's what I discovered. So as I started learning lean and CI, I needed to make my own personal culture. So I had to match lean principles with knowledge that I already possessed, and that was theater knowledge. And I'll get into that in a little bit. So I broke my plan into 5 basic steps. I wanted to create a baseline, a current state, a future state, and I had to gather data in unusual ways because my data was all subjective. And, you know, some people will see a magic trick and know exactly how it works, and other people will look at the same thing and be fascinated. So you have to create some sort of a balance. What data is real and what data isn't real. So I'll show you how I did that too. And then apply the lean tools and just keep doing it over and over and over. So let's take a look at the current state. So what is this? This is Cleopatra, the movie. Now, there's a reason why I'm putting this up here. When you are looking for answers, you have to create a state of mind where you're open to possibilities. And that's very hard because some people, when they're mired in a system, that breaking out of that system is extremely hard to do. But if you keep your mind open, you will find that there are solutions to almost every single problem that you can possibly imagine. I always look at the movie Apollo 13. Imagine you're in this capsule that's completely busted, and yet they were able to get those guys home. That would have been an impossible situation. But because they had teams of people working on that problem, they were able to solve it and bring them home safely. Same thing with me for my current state. I was open up to any ideas. So I'm watching Cleopatra, and I pause the movie to go get some popcorn, and I come back downstairs, and I'm looking at this. Antony and Cleopatra locked in eyes. And I'm like, what is going on here? That looks like a poster. And then I let the movie play, and I paused again. And I'm like, this is amazing. Look at all of the expression and the props and the costuming. And it's just like, okay, that is going to be my goal. My goal is not to look like Cleopatra, the movie, but my goal is I should be able to play my video of my act and pause it at any point, and I should be able to see something that looks like a story. So let's take a look and see what it looks like for other types of entertainment. So this is Avatar, a Swedish rock band. And I did the same thing for a rock band. And I'm like, wow, that guy looks really interesting. Why is he wearing makeup? Look, he's got some sort of a military costume. The band is fantastic. to watch, very animated. And then I did Brian Regan, who is a comedian, great at storytelling. Just the way his hand is being held, he's miming that he's holding something. And so I was like, yes, if you are telling a good story, no matter if it's singing, acting, or just a comedian, something is happening. You should be able to understand that something is going on. So I did it to my act. And I could not find any reason for this act to be. And there was no story in it. It looks like I'm beating a drum in the middle photograph. However, the part about this that I found amazing is I had to understand the humility of starting something brand new. And even though I look back at it with embarrassment, I also know that that's the only way you can start something. So when you're starting to solve a problem, it can be really ugly and clunky at the very beginning. But as you refine it and get it down to its basics, it can be really something special. So never, ever worry about your humble beginning. So I have my future state and my current state. Now we're going to start gathering the data. Before we start working on the act, I got to understand what my act is and what I'm trying to do. And one of the first things I found out is I was asking the wrong question whenever I performed my routine for people. I would say, well, how did you like the act? And of course, people are going to say, I loved it. It was great. There were points in it that I have no idea how you did this and did that and the other thing. And that wasn't helping me. Not one single bit did it help me, because if you're only winning all of the time, it means that either you're not competing against the right people or you're just in front of the wrong people. And it wasn't until my neighbor, who was an engineer, that came over, he watched my act and his wife said he thought that the act was stupid. And I said, why? And he's like, well, it's fine. You don't have to worry about it. And I said, wait, what's bothering you? And boom, that is the moment that I had an epiphany. I was asking the wrong question. The right question I should have been asking people was, what bothered you? What bothered you about the act? That question really launched a corridor for people to give me all kinds of tips and advice, because I'm not asking them if they like the act, because nobody wants to tell you that the act stinks to your face. But what they will tell you is, I didn't quite understand what you were doing when you did this, or why are you wearing this costume? I don't understand. That guy seems confusing to me. Oh, and once I started asking this particular question, the bells started going off in people's brains, and I started getting all of the answers that I needed. And speaking about my brain, I had to rewire it. And this is part about gathering data. So my old flow map was pretty typical for any artist. You will rehearse a song or, a skit or whatever it is that you're working on. For me, it's magic. And I would get in front of people. That would be a booking. And then I would do the performance. And then the audience would respond positively or negatively. And then there would be feedback after the show is over with. And that's it. And I thought, well, that is not enough information, because that is the cycle that I've used my entire career. And it's like, it's got to get better than that. So what I did is I used open source, or sort of open source. What I invited people to do was watch me experiment through videotaping my act and distributing those videos to a core group of people that I trust. And they would give me director feedback, and then I would do improvements, and this whole cycle would start over again. But look at how much more data I'm getting when I get more people involved. And I think that's where you get the lone wolf system at work, where you have one person that has a task and they're working on their computer to do whatever it is, crunch numbers or solve some sort of a logistics problem, whatever it is, and they feel like they're on their own. And the other part is that you have a PMP system in a lot of corporations, and it's like, I want to be the one who gets the credit for this. And I think that system kind of hinders this process, because you want to get your bonus, you want to get all of these things credited to you so that you can say, look at what I did. But unfortunately, that's not how good systems work. A good system is where you have everybody collaborating together, everybody working toward a solution, because you have upstream and downstream. We already know what that is. That if you do something as a lone wolf, but you don't know what is going on upstream and you don't know what's going on downstream from your decision, you could muck up the whole thing. But when you get more people involved, the improvements that you make are immediately distributed and everybody understands what the impact is. So that was a big epiphany for me, was to open source my act. As a matter of fact, I invited people a few times as a Facebook Live in my living room. And I would have 250 people tuned in from I didn't care who they were. And I would get advice instantaneously, what people thought of the act. And the thing that was interesting is I said, I'm just going to do this rehearsal in front of whoever is going to watch. And whether it goes good or bad, it doesn't matter. And what ended up happening is it became an excitement. Like, is this going to be a train wreck, or is this going to be really fun to watch? And sometimes they were train wrecks, and a lot of times they were really fun to watch. But in the outcome, I got some really good ideas. So let's get into the lean tools. Now, at the very beginning, I told you that lean is a lot like theater. And when you're learning a new system, it's a good idea to take that system and try to incorporate it into knowledge that you already have. And for me, theater knowledge is how I was going to wire my brain to lean tools. So let's get into that. So direct observation, theater knowledge, director, and audience. Okay, well, that makes sense. It's pretty easy. 5 why, which is problem solving. Well, that's story and character. Now, when you think of a story, you do not have a story unless your character has a problem to solve. And this is what your hero journey is, where if you think of Lord of the Rings, the precious little ring. Well, that ring is a big problem when Gollum gets the ring. And then that ring has to be thrown back into the volcano of, what is it, Mordor or whatever. And in that journey to get that ring to its destination is filled with all kinds of peril. And that's where 5 why really does work with storytelling, because not only is 5 why trying to help me better the story, it's trying to put problems into my story. So it works both ways. Waste walking. Waste walking is huge in theater. You have props that have to be moved from one side of the stage to the other or off stage. You have choreography, you have blocking, and you have lighting and all kinds of interaction. You have people that need to not run into each other on stage and off stage. And this waste walking process is very, very critical in theater, so that when you're watching a play, it looks like real life and seamless, rather than a bunch of people not understanding where they need to go. 5S is a tool that I use when you're trying to invent brand new tricks. Now, that's something about this world competition that you need to know about, is you cannot do any off-the-shelf magic. Everything that you do has to be an invention of your own. So you have to put together a workshop, and you have to be able to do rapid prototyping. And if you're using half of your time to try to find a prop or a tool or a piece of cardboard, even something as simple as tape, can be a nightmare if you are not organized. And being organized is very important, especially in the creative arts, because sometimes you have an idea that you really can't put on paper, but you need to get it physically in front of you so at least you can get something to work with. And that's why 5S is so important. The andon. Now, I don't have a manufacturing plant for an andon to somebody to pull a cord, flip a switch, and stop the assembly line. But what I do have is audience and direct feedback. And for me, the audience is either an andon pull for me is somebody who's spending their time on the cell phone and not watching my performance. Or if they're booing or talking or laughing or just not paying attention, that is a warning sign to me that I've lost my audience and I have to regain them. So in the world of theater, it's being called taken out of the story. I know that you've probably seen movies where the editor forgets or misses that a microphone is at the top of the screen, and it just dips in for a second and then dips back out. Immediately, that takes you out of the story. I mean, it tells your brain, oh, this is fake. Or it reminds you that it's fake. And you know how hard it is for a live performance to get people in mass back into your story when you've lost them. It's extremely difficult, and theater is incredibly important. Process mapping. Process mapping is how I build the act. I call it offline rehearsing. For me, I can put all of my different types of tricks or plot suggestions into this map on my wall of Post-it notes, and I do an offline rehearsal. So before I put anything to motor memory, I do process mapping to make that process faster. Reviews are reviews by others and myself. FMEA is failure mode effects analysis, and that's just editing out effects that are high risk. So let's get into direct observation. I needed to put together a core of people. The guy with the scissors, that's Gene Anderson. I want to focus on this one guy, Tobin Oast. It's an interesting story here. When I wanted to get into the World Championships of Magic, and I knew I had something special with this mirror idea, I needed to take it to the next level. Tobin is a very well-known, Tony-nominated Broadway production designer. He is responsible for the musical Newsies. That is his entire production design. He also has worked with Steven Spielberg on West Side Story, the movie, and lots of other. If you just look him up, he's an incredible resource, but he's also from my hometown of Adrian, Michigan. So I found him on Facebook and I messaged him and I said, Tobin, this is Stuart MacDonald. I don't know if you even know who I am, but would you mind helping me with my magic act? Because I want to be in the World Championships of Magic. 10 minutes later, he says, here's my number. Give me a call. I want to talk to you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. So I call him up and he said, Stuart, I'm so glad you called. I'm so glad you reached out. Absolutely, yes. And if you make it to the World Championships in Busan, South Korea in 2018, I would like to go with you. And I'm like, what is going on? I said, I can't afford you. And he goes, don't worry about it. And I said, I don't understand what's happening. He said, all I'm looking for is a tip. 1 or 2 tips from you would be all I need in the world. And he said, no, I really want to see this through with you. And I go, really? And he goes, yeah, no charge, nothing. Let's just get to work. And then he said, I want to tell you a story. He said, when I was in elementary school in Adrian, you came to our school and you did a magic show and you brought me up on stage and you did the cut and restored rope trick with me. He said, that stuck with me. And you are the first person to introduce me to theater. And I'm like, what the heck is this? This emphasizes the idea of reaching out for help can yield amazing stories and connections. And then you find out just how connected we really are. So then he starts digging into me. And the first thing is that he said, now you haven't seen me wear the purple suit act, part of this show that I did, but I bought his purple suit thinking that it would make the act even better. And it only confused people more. But it was $400. And he said, why are you wearing a purple suit? And I said, because it's a cool looking jacket. And he goes, no, that's not what, no. He said, you don't know who you are. In my mind, my act was a vignette of somebody going into a store to buy magic props. That's how confusing this act was to people. They had no idea it was a shop. But in my mind, if I put price tags on props, that would give the signal that it was a shop. Well, people just don't walk around coming off the street with a purple suit like that into a shop. He said, why don't you get yourself into a costume that's from a different era, because you need time, place, and motivation. And this guy right here is not a magician. He's just a man off the street where now the magic is happening to you rather than you doing the magic. And that makes it more interesting because every single thing that this character is going to do is going to be a problem to solve. That suit I found at Goodwill for $7.50. So already, Tobinos is saving me all kinds of money. Now, I've already told you about process mapping. That's what my wall was looking like as I was progressing with the act. So Tobin and I, we get to more and more problem solving. And this is where I want to talk to you about the 8 wastes of theater. Transportation, it's traveling to gigs. And I'll tell you what, when my act was getting started, it could not fit into an SUV, this tiny little act. So I had to really work hard at making the act as small and compact as possible. Inventory. I had to limit the number of tricks and effects that I was doing to cause less confusion and drive the story farther. Motion and blocking, I had to redo the entire act because now the magic was happening to me. Waiting. In FISM, number 1, you have a time limit of 10 minutes. And number 2, you cannot have the audience waiting for a trick to happen. You've got to get in there and you got to start doing the trick right away. So there's very little buildup time. Over processing, you don't want to repeat the same tricks. Over production, you don't want to have a complicated plot, which is what I had. And defects, just editing the story, and skills, ignoring skills. And I found out that one of the skills that I was ignoring was my acting ability. And then all of a sudden, when we changed it from a guy off the street, my acting ability was engaged and the show started really taking off. And here's some pictures of how the act was evolving. First of all, you saw me rehearse in that really awful living room with the black jacket. Then here in the upper left, you've got me with the purple suit. And that act really wasn't too bad. However, it was confusing. Notice the price tags. For some reason, I thought that that was enough for people to think I was trying to buy something. But then we have the other guy with the brown suit, and you see it's magic for sale. Now we've got a big sign that says magic for sale, and it has a little, underneath that sign, it says pay here. So that act started winning awards, but still it wasn't good enough. And then you go to the lower left, and that's when the act hit pay dirt. I ended up going to a seamstress in Kalamazoo, and she built this wonderful plaid suit for me, and the act really got dressed up. So as you can see, by problem solving and looking at every detail of the act, you find out that talent seeks its own level. If I would have stayed in the upper left corner or even the top right corner and thought, this is the greatest act ever, I would have never gotten to the next level. So those are some seeds to think about. Now, here I am performing at the Magic Castle for the very first time in 2016. And you'll notice that the mirror is on top of a table. It was a vanity. And then I get this crazy idea. I'm going to take the mirror off of the table and I'm going to make it a freestanding mirror. And here I am practicing it for the first time in my living room. And boom, by taking the mirror off of the table, everything started changing very quickly. So that gets us to the qualifying round. We're now at 2017. The mirror is off the table. I've got this great little character that I've invented. And I remember 3 years ago, everybody thought that, I was the worst person in the world to be in this competition. And again, we had people from all over the world competing. And remember my current state. This is how they remembered me from 3 years ago. This is what I'm presenting to them at the competition. And look what happened. I stole the whole thing. I didn't steal it. I earned my way into it. I won the International Brotherhood of Magicians International Championships, first place. Society of American Magicians, that's the national division, that's first place. I had an originality award. I had the SAM Silver Medal of Merit. I don't even know what that is, but it's a very prestigious medal. And then the People's Choice Award. This act took off. And it wasn't long before Penn Teller got a hold of it. And they're producers. And I knew that there was no way that I was going to fool those guys. So I put together this plan, a continuous improvement plan, because I only had 30 days to prepare for the show. So I wanted to do 100 improvements in 30 days. So I was going to videotape myself 100 times from every conceivable angle, and I was going to do one change every taping. No matter what it was going to be one change. One change would equal 1%. So in 30 days, in theory, my act would be 100% better than what it was. And mentally, that made me feel very confident that I was going to be able to fool them. Now, those pennies in those mason jars, critical. I would have 100 pennies in one jar and an empty jar next to it. And every time I would improve something, I'd put a penny into the other jar. And that kept me honest, because if those pennies weren't moving, it meant that I wasn't doing my job. And also, it was a visual reminder that I'm actually doing something. So if you have a continuous improvement plan in your place of business, it's good to have some sort of a visual marker that you don't have to see in your computer. It's got to be analog. It's got to be something that's visual right when you walk in. So here is the new act.
Prepare to be amazed by the classic magic of Stuart MacDonald.
Oh, I hear you, but I don't hear the video.
I can hear it. We can hear it.
Okay. Never mind.
I'll restart it from here.
It's weird because I can hear you and then the video went dead, but everybody else is gone.
Do you think you can pull a fool's trophy behind the mirror?
I don't know. That's pretty difficult, but I've been working hard on it for quite a while.
And then Teller just turned to me and gave me the crux of the whole thing. When he turned to me and said, boy, I should have watched closer. We got so carried away by the plot that we missed a really important element of this, would have given the whole thing away. I don't know what that element is, so you fooled us.
So just imagine, you could just see the look on my face. Here I am, I'm face to face with my idols in magic. And just 3 years prior to that, I was a laughingstock. So yes, even using rudimentary lean principles can be applied to anything, and it simply works. Now we're all going to do a mass trick together for my final volley for all of you to learn more about magic and lean and how it all works. we have right here is lots of different continuous improvement and lean language. I want you to put your finger on any box, any definition there, direct observation, current, future state, whatever. Just put your finger on the screen and just hold it there. Now, I want you to move 4 times, and I'll start by saying 1, 2, 3, and 4. So ready? Move 4 times. Once. Move again. Move again. And move again. All right. Now keep your finger on that box. Now I've made a prediction. How many of you, and I hope that you can raise your hand or put an emoji out there, landed on the 7 wastes? Just put up an emoji, and if you did. All right, now we're going to do this again, but we're going to use standard operating procedures. Once you have your trick or your process working properly, the next thing you got to do is just to keep refining it. And when you use standard work, you can find where mistakes are made right away. And I already know the mistake that I made. So let's go to standard work. Now, as you can see on the screen, it says start on any blue square. So I want you to start on any blue square. Keep your finger on that blue square, whatever it is. Okay, now we're going to add some standard work. I want you to move left or right to the nearest yellow square. Now I want you to move up or down to the nearest blue square. Now we're going to move diagonally to the nearest yellow square. And now we're going to move down or to the right to the nearest blue square. Keep your finger on that square. Concentrate on that. Look in the genie's eyes. How many of you ended up on continuous improvement? We're hoping just about everybody. Look at that. Look at all those thumbs up. This is amazing. Woo! Right on. And that is the magic of continuous improvement. So that concludes my little seminar there. I hope you all enjoyed the magic journey that I've had. And now is the time for questions and answers. And hopefully I'll be able to get you some. Talk about KPIs. And I had to eliminate that slide because of our time. But what I did is I put a timeline of my career. And in a 20-year lifespan of my career in magic, I had only a few areas where I had big jumps in my career. And then in the short span of time from 2014 to 20, gosh, we didn't even add COVID into it. The amount of attention that this 10-minute act has given to me and my entire act that I have more than just this act. Man, I've been on several national television shows. Last year, I did 17 shows in a theater across the street from the Vatican in Rome. I get offers from all over the world to do this act. And I've met tons of celebrities. I've met people from Seinfeld, George Costanza, that actor, Jason Alexander. And here I am in Hollywood at the Magic Castle. So that is my KPI. When people start noticing, and the people that are noticing are also the people who are in charge of these big production shows, and they choose you, that's my KPI. Now, I did see a question about, did I win the big competition in the world competition? No, I did not. But I got in the top 10, which was really important. And I have an analogy for that. It's called the 2% rule. And the 2% rule is that if you were envisioning the 100-meter dash in the Olympics, everybody crosses the line within 1/100th of a second of each other. And within that 1/100th of a second is the 2% difference. And that 2% difference is the entire competition. It's not the whole dash. It's that last part that can make or break the person who's going to win or lose or get in last place. And the same thing is with this, is that I was in that last 2%, the top 10 people. And as an American in that competition, it's extremely difficult because we do not get the same opportunities that other people in other countries have. Arts programs have lots of money that they can give artists for development. And unfortunately, we really don't have that kind of development in our country. Some of these people will come in with acts that they've been working on since they were 7 years old and have huge teams that are involved in it. No, I didn't win, but I did win. So that's the important thing. You know, it's all about the buy-in. I think because I noticed it when Lean started in the company that I work at, is that everybody's really resistant. The first thing they think of is that, oh, my job's going to be taken away from me, just like the movie Office Space. Everybody gets worried. And so the way I looked at it is, it's like, no. This is a way to actually improve the way your work is done so that you can experiment and do other things. They made me the team lead for Lean and continuous improvement on our team because I was really passionate about it. And then we had a national convention and I told them my story and they made me the speaker at that convention for the company that I work at. And nobody knew that behind the scenes, I was using Lean to fool Penn Teller and then go on to the World Championships of Magic. Nobody understood that, but then they saw the enthusiasm that I had for it. And it was outside of work, but because I was becoming so successful at it, that was translating easier into work. And I think that people get confused when they see all the charts and the graphs and the data, the KPIs that you have to look at and the metrics. And it all gets boggy and foggy and worrisome. But I think if management said, okay, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to learn about Lean, but before we apply it at work, I want you to apply it to something at home. And whether it's golf, tennis, crocheting, I don't care what it is. And then tell us how you improved. And then they will understand that I'm improving something at home and I think I can make it improve here. It's a matter of rewiring your brain. Well, next goal is improve my speaking engagements. I have a really unique experience where when I'm doing my speaking, I'm not doing the mirror act, but what I'm doing is in my live show, I take the pick a card trick and I do a very, very complex version of that. And then live in front of the audience, I walk people through how I eliminate the waste that's within that trick. And I do the trick again. It's the same trick, pick a card, and I'm going to find it, but I do it in a different way. And then I do it one more time. And by eliminating waste, I do the entire card trick without a deck of cards. So just getting right down to the source of the trick, it's mind-blowing when they see it done that way. The first time I did that at this last seminar, it got a standing ovation. And I'm like, okay, I'm on to something. I just want to keep on revising that. I think what you're leaning into is that, am I going to compete again? It's like, no, I don't want to compete again. I want to get into the speaking arena because I think I can inspire more people that way rather than just saying, hey, look at what I can do. I want to inspire people to think differently. Yeah, I just want to say thank you very much for this opportunity. And I'm glad that everybody liked the presentation. It was really fun to break up my day here in Hollywood, California, because it's raining and cold outside. So it's nice to be inside where it's warm.